Hello, and welcome to my review of Black Clover. It's been about a year and a half since my first read through of the series, and thus, over the course of our current hiatus, I decided to reread the entirety of Black Clover. Now, I do want to start off with some of my general opinions on the full story, and this spans from chapter 1 up until chapter 368. I love Black Clover. Black Clover is not objectively the best story I have ever read, and it's also personally not my favorite manga, but it is certainly one of the most enjoyable manga I have ever read from start to current chapter. I do have some criticisms of the story, and that will be very apparent in my review and opinions on the final arc. This story, though, with its characters, world, power system, plot twist, and fights, kept me nigh constantly engaged in all of the events going on. Now, also from this most recent read through, I feel like I have a better understanding of people's criticisms towards Black Clover. I do disagree with a majority of them, as a lot of them tend to be subjective, but there are a few I do see now. With this read through, I also have a much better understanding of people's love for the story. And I must say that I certainly do enjoy and love Black Clover a lot more than I did now as opposed to my first read through. There's also a variety of events and abilities that I had forgotten about, whether they be bigger character moments or smaller character revelations, or just how an ability worked. Things I'd forgotten, things I didn't understand, I now have a much better understanding of, as well as smaller narrative plot points, smaller things to pick up on, context clues, or even just visual storytelling that's not told to you. I have a much better handle on a lot of those smaller things now. And I would say my misreading or not picking up on things does tend to affect how I view the story, and this even extends to the events in chapter 368 with Yami versus his current opponent. And I'm really glad that I have a better grasp on the full narrative now, as opposed to when I was making those weekly chapter reviews. Now, while compiling all my things I want to talk about for these videos, I had almost 400 bullet points of information, characters, events that I wanted to talk about and give my opinion on. I've cut that down to little little under half, and I just really want to stick to the important things as opposed to going into detail about each and every little thing, because I doubt you guys want to hear about all that. The rest of the video will cover the start of Black Clover, specifically from chapter 1 to the end of the royal ceremony / hot springs arc, and I am going to skim through a lot of this. The first 100 chapters or so are enjoyable, but they are the least exciting part of the story for me, and I just don't have a whole lot to say on a lot of different things. Chapter 1 was a very strong opener in my opinion, and my favorite part of this chapter, and one of my favorite aspects of Black Clover, is the rivalry between Asta and Yuno. It's not a rivalry like Deku and Bakugo, or Naruto and Sasuke. It's a much more brotherly, friendly, competitive rivalry, and that's what I really like about the dynamic between these two characters, even here in the early chapters. Another aspect of Black Clover that I personally quite love is its comedy. I really like Black Clover's comedy, both in its execution and its integration into the story. I think it flows very well, and there are some great jokes, even in the early chapters here. And Asta and Yuno are two of especially my favorites. Uh, One of my favorite running jokes in the series is something major happening or something surprising happening, and Yuno just having a very deadpan facial expression. Now, the first major arc with Asta joining the Black Bulls, meeting Yami and Noel, Magna taking them to the village, and then the village battle with Heath. This was fun. Um, a little bit boring at times, but I really don't have anything more to say about it than that. Moving on to the dungeon arc, my favorite part of this arc was Luck. I love Luck as a character, and I especially love getting to see his backstory and learn about how he uses his magic in battle. The setting of the dungeon was very interesting, and I wish that we did get to see more dungeons throughout the story. Now, the antagonist of this arc is a character that I wish we got more of, but I highly doubt that we will, and that is Mars. I like Mars a lot in this arc, and I especially like him even more in the Witch Queen's Forest arc later on. His magic was very interesting to me with his Stitch Grimoire. Now, aside from Mars, we have the Diamond Kingdom. I don't like these guys. They were actually the leading reason as to why I dropped Black Clover almost 3 to 4 years ago. This antagonistic group is just so boring to me, and I am very glad that they are long gone from the story. Up next is the Invasion of the Capital arc. I'm honestly not too wild about this arc. I liked the introduction with Julius, and I remember being very deeply intrigued by him on my first read through. In this arc, I also don't like Nozel. He just seems like your stereotypical older brother who looks down on his sibling. Now, obviously, we learn much later on that he's not like this, and I actually don't want to delve too far into Nozel in these videos, as I actually just want to make a full video dedicated to him, because he's the character I've had the biggest turnaround with throughout my current reread. Fuegoleon was a blast. His speech about weakness is something that I still carry with me, and he's absolutely my favorite part of this arc. I do dislike that nowadays he's just kind of fodder, especially among the captains, but I do hope he'll get a bigger moment later on. The ending with Julius showing up did a good job at displaying how capable Julius was, and it set a well placed bar for Asta to reach. Really don't have much else to say about this arc. The Eye of the Midnight Sun Encounter arc. The first half of this arc is really boring. It's the hardest part of Black Clover for me to get through, and I heavily dislike Gauche for most of the story, so that doesn't help. Now, once Licht shows up in this arc, things really begin to pick up for me. I love his demeanor, how he speaks about his followers, and Yami showing up was another incredible entrance. This is personally where I really began to like Yami, and Licht versus Yami was a very bombastic fight for this early portion of the series, and I gotta say that it actually does hold up pretty well in the reread. I find Key to be a fascinating addition to the story. I think it's a great power up for Asta. It's a very minuscule power up that is expanded upon later on. And what can I say? I just absolutely love the moment of Asta punching Voltos in the face. Now, the ending of this arc with Rebecca kissing Asta was very sweet. I wish that we got to see more of her through the story because I really like her character dynamic and perspective in relation to Asta, though I don't want them to end up together, not that that'll ever happen. After this is the Underwater Temple arc. From here on out, I would say the story doesn't lose my attention, and I have an all around positive opinion regarding each of the following arcs of the story. The first part of this arc was both hilarious and lighthearted, with the beach chapters, the introduction of the city and the temple, as well as the start of the Black Bullfights. Once Veto shows up, this arc really does pick up quite a bit for me. While Veto's not deep or complex, he was an entertaining antagonist for this arc, and the Black Bulls versus Veto was a fight I did not think I would appreciate as much as I did on this reread. Noel's Sea Dragon was honestly kind of hype, and this is the moment where I really began to like Noelle, and I would actually say I have a great deal of appreciation for her character after this reread as opposed to the first one. Asta, Finral, and Vanessa versus Veto was the highlight of this arc for me. Similar to Yami versus Licht, it's a battle that I have quite a fond opinion of, especially for it being so early. Now, of course, Yami's finisher was just incredible, and I love seeing people's reactions to Yami coming and saving them. And I find that this arc has a pretty good closing few chapters as well. Second to last here is the Witch Queen's Forest arc. Right off the bat, the plotline of Asta's broken arms was a very nice addition to the story, in my opinion. The reveal of Vanessa being a witch was fascinating, and I came out of this arc with much more of a positive opinion about her character. I'm honestly not thrilled or interested in any of the three antagonists here, that being the Eye of the Midnight Sun, the Diamond Kingdom, and the Witch Queen. I especially dislike the Diamond Kingdom as part from Mars. The Mars and Fauna scene was beautiful, and it's one of my favorite scenes, if not possibly my favorite, in this early portion of Black Clover. Asta versus Ladros was a fantastic finisher to the arc. I especially love rereading Asta using his devil powers for the first time. The Witch Queen swooping in at the end was surprising the first time I read it, but honestly, I'm just not a big fan of her here. Rounding off this arc, though, I did want to bring up something that I truly love about Asta's character, and that Asta was not born special, but through this fact in itself, it ended up making Asta special, and opening a door for him to be able to use an ability that no one else really could. And that's what I like about Asta having anti-magic, and how he was a person with no powers to gaining an incredible power. I like the progression here and how it's explained and how he achieves it, and also what that leads to later on down the road. The royal ceremony arc was alright. I didn't dislike anything. It's meant to be a breather, sort of cap off for this early portion, and I think it does a pretty good job at that. Then the Hot Springs arc. Asta using his black form on command was a fascinating scene, and it shows some real growth from him early on. Then, to close off this arc, we have a scene that I quite like, and that is Mario Leona's conversation with Noelle, and what this conversation would help Noelle achieve with her character arc moving forward. Now, while overall I have a very positive opinion of the story of Black Clover, it's even in my top 10 manga, I do have some criticisms of this early portion of the story. I found this early portion of the story to be very slow at times, and personally, I really did not like Noelle's character at all prior to the Underwater Temple arc. She just felt like such a one-note tsundere. Veto and Fauna were fun, but they were very one-note, and I wish that the both of them, especially Fauna, had a little bit more complexity to their characters. Ladros' face turn at the end of the Witch Queen Forest arc was just lame, in my opinion. And the Diamond Kingdom absolutely killed my interest anytime they were on screen. The King of the Clover Kingdom is very disappointing to me. I understand that he's supposed to be a joke, and he does a good job as a joke, but honestly, I would rather him have just been a scummy elitist who was more serious compared to what we have. Finally is Yuno. I don't hate Yuno, but apart from his comedy scenes, I really don't have much care for this character at this portion of the story. I'm not invested in him, and this does change. By the end of the Elf Saga, I like him a little bit, but not by much. And the major change would, of course, come with the Spade Saga, where a complete 180 occurs, and Yuno's one of my top 10 Black Clover characters. That does conclude my thoughts on this early portion of the story. The first 100 chapters or so are fun, but not necessarily my favorite. I'm excited to get into what comes next. I hope you guys all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.